Hello everyone, Tim Gaming, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you another video. But as you can see from the title, today's video is something a little bit different because normally I upload FIFA and Call of Duty and talk primarily about that. But as you can see, today I am going to be talking about Assassin's Creed, and I've played every single Assassin's Creed game since the first game. But no franchise has declined more in my estimation since Mass Effect, and that's because Mass Effect had the most despicable ending to a game I've ever experienced, and then had the temerity to suggest that you buy DLC after making you sit through 30 minutes of pure and utter drivel. So, that's pretty much unbeatable as it goes for shoddiness. So Assassin's Creed unfortunately falls just above that, and I'm going to explain to you why now, because Assassin's Creed 1 is one of my favourite games of all time, and a lot of people say it was a bit repetitive. The missions were all laid out practically the same, you did pretty much the same thing, and I can understand that criticism because the vast majority of the time you spent in Assassin's Creed, you did pretty much the same thing. You were given a target to kill, and then you had to go off and you had to beat up informers or eavesdrop on conversations or whatever, and every single major mission you did followed that same pattern, and you had to climb viewpoints and to unlock these things, and it was all a little bit repetitive in that sense. However, Assassin's Creed for me is such a good game because no one had really attempted to do that on that scale before, because you had a completely open world game where you could climb every single surface and attack from loads of different angles, and then they just gave you a mission and didn't tell you how to do it. They just say kill that guy and go off and do it however you wanted. And that's what makes Assassin's Creed so brilliant for me, and that's why I love the first game so much, because you had so much freedom to decide what you wanted to do. And I remember one mission in particular, which was a mission where I think you had to kill a Templar priest, and he was inside a lunatic asylum. And that has to be one of my favourite missions of all time in any game, because most of the time you'd basically go up in your monk pose with your clasped hands, and everyone standing around you would somehow forget that you were carrying 14 broadswords and enough armaments to equip the US Army, and just go, yeah, that's fine, he's a monk. And you'd just sneak up to the guy and you'd one bomb him in the face, and that would be mission over, and you could just run off. However, in that mission, you'd go in and you'd try that monk thing, but there'd be the lunatics around, and they'd punch you and knock you out of it, and all of a sudden, the Templars would see, oh, he's there, he's not a monk at all, he's carrying a sword, let's go and kill him. So I tried that a couple of times and failed, and I'd gone round and done all the informer missions and eavesdropped, and I remember one of them saying, oh, these roof repairs are taking a bit too long, there's ladders all over the place, and it would put a little bit of thing in your anonymous information saying, oh, the ladders are there so you can escape through the roof if you wanted. So I spent ages and ages looking at all the information, casing the area out, checking the routes the guards took, and I managed to go in, assassinate the guy, run up and escape without getting hit. And I absolutely, the feeling of accomplishment in doing something like that was astounding. And it was a game that really captured my imagination because it had such an epic setting, and it was open world, and you had so much freedom within the missions because it was a linear storyline. There weren't branching paths, you couldn't take multiple options. But as far as between A and B, the route you took there was whatever you wanted. You could kill them however you want, you could use whatever weapon or tactic, and I absolutely loved that. But as the series has gone on, it's begun to move more and more and more and more away from that. And you can tell from the title why I'm not looking forward to Assassin's Creed 4, that I'm not happy with how the series has gone. Because, in my opinion, the series and the franchise has really gone away from what made it special. Because like I've just been explaining, what made the first game really special to me was the focus on assassinating and, the cleverness and planning your routes and the open world and just the whole freedom. Every single game that's gone on, they've slowly whittled down what that is in the game and the importance that plays. And if you play one of the newer games now, yes, they still look amazing, and yes, the graphics are fantastic and all that, but the gameplay's changed. What makes the game is completely altered. And I'm just going to run you through a little bit of this now. If you go into Assassin's Creed 3 now, obviously the latest game that's out, and if you play through that, you will see that the vast majority of time you spend now has absolutely nothing to do with assassinating. I don't think you assassinate one person in there, and you say, oh, you hidden blade them, but yeah, there's no skill involved now. It's basically become a combat-based hack and slash, because from the first minute of the game, you are practically as powerful as you are ever going to be in combat in Assassin's Creed 3. Yeah, you can buy a couple of weapons from the one general store in Boston, and we'll get onto Boston in a bit, but basically, you are just as powerful as you're ever going to be. And you are a combat machine. You can just go in and butcher 30 guys in a blink of an eye once you've got the mechanics sorted. And it just removes the excitement, it removes the challenge. And, you know, if you go back to the earlier games, I can remember running up against the Templars in the battles, and you know, when you just started out the game, you hadn't unlocked enough things to counter them, so when you saw a Templar coming, basically you either ran away or you died. You know, combat, whilst still an important part of the game, was a last resort. However, as the series has gone on, combat has become the primary game mechanic now. Assassinating and being sneaky and waiting in hay bales, yes, you can still do that, but what is the point of spending 30 minutes on a mission when you can just go in, swing an axe around, and just butcher everyone in sight really easily and still complete the mission? So, immediately, the first thing for me that made Assassin's Creed so special, that fantastic mission setup and the planning and the assassinating focus, which, you know, it is called Assassin's Creed, so it should really be about being an assassin. That's completely gone out the way, and instead you're now this mass murdering invincible Terminator who can just take anyone out with just by looking at them, pretty much. And that's completely taken away from the gameplay, in my opinion. But, you know, the second thing I mentioned, which I really loved about Assassin's Creed, was the epicness of it. I mean, the open world settings in the Crusades, you had all of these cities, and you had the people around react to your actions in a realistic way that you hadn't seen before. And these environments were huge, and there were so many buildings to climb, and you could spend hour after hour after hour in those cities and still find something new every time you went in. And I loved that. I absolutely loved that. And if you look at Assassin's Creed 3 now, the only reasonable city you go in is Boston. There's only one meaningful building to climb, and it is the greyest, dullest city of all time. So not only have you removed all the assassinating and the cunning from the missions, you've now removed the epicness of the location. And, you know, some fans will go, oh, but yeah, you can climb trees now. No, you can't. You can climb incredibly scripted climbing locations which aren't trees at all. You can't just climb a random tree. There is this very conveniently placed log, which is very conveniently placed next to several hundred other trees which you can just jump to. But it's not a skillful jump, because I can remember in the first few games, you know, the free running, if you made that one mistake, you slipped off and you face planted into the floor from 300 feet, and that was game over, you were dead. In this game, in the trees, you cannot fall off. It is literally impossible. If you hold R1 and go, the computer means that you basically can't fall. So the whole free running, the parkour, the exploration aspect has gone. So you've got rid of the assassination, you've got rid of the epic environments and the free roaming. And what have you really replaced them with? The vast majority of Assassin's Creed in the recent games have been pointless, and I'm going to explain an example here. Okay, in Assassin's Creed 3 you've got the homestead missions. Now, the homestead missions are a very sizable chunk of the game. To get all of the characters and all of the people living in your little hamlet, it would take quite a lot of time. They've all got their own little missions, and it's quite a large part of the game. Now, the only real benefit of doing this is to increase the amount of trade routes you get and the amount of things you can trade. So you're spending all of this time working on your homestead, getting all of your stuff together to be able to trade. Now, the only benefit of that trade is money, and the only thing you can spend money on, because like I mentioned earlier, Boston's only really got one general store. You've got those couple of horse-drawn merchants that drive around the city, but there's not a lot of stuff you can buy. You can buy a couple of swords, but you know, at the end of the day, most people, all they're going to do is they're going to buy the one most powerful sword they can afford, and that's it. And the only other thing you can buy are upgrades for your ship. Now, the only thing you get useful out of ship upgrades and the battles are more unlockable trade routes. So you're earning all this money to spend on a ship to enable you to earn more money which you can't spend on anything. So you spend hour after hour after hour after hour pointlessly doing nothing for no reward. And that is a huge part of the game. And if you go back to previous Assassin's Creeds with the whole city rebuilding mechanic where you basically buy a shop and it renovates a bit of the city and it earns you money on the hour, you get to a point in the game where you had more money than you would ever need in 100 playthroughs, and you were just sitting on this ridiculous bank balance that you physically couldn't spend fast enough. No, I actually went out and said, right, I'm going to try and spend all of my money in an hour that I've just earned in the previous hour before the next tick happens, and I physically couldn't get rid of it. I was buying all the most rubbish weapons and renovating as many shops as possible, but of course it's a double-edged sword. As soon as you've renovated that shop, you get even more money, which generates you more stuff you can buy. Well, no, you can't generate more stuff. The only things you can buy are the stuff you've already bought, which you can't buy twice, and more shops, which generate you more money that you can't spend on anything. So you begin to see the problem here. Assassin's Creed now is 40% of the game that it was, 60% pointless filler. And if you just go back to the tower defense game as well, why did anyone think Assassin's Creed needed a tower defense game? It is just completely and utterly alien to everything that series stood for, and it has been crowbarred in to make the game longer and make it a more fulfilling experience, and it just didn't fit at all. It was awful. I sat there and thought, yeah, the mechanics of this tower defense game are okay. It's not the most shocking thing in the world. But what is it doing in an Assassin's Creed game? Seriously. So, you've removed all of this stuff that's made it special. You've replaced it with basically filler, which has nothing to do with anything. And the story itself hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, when you went into Assassin's Creed 1, this story was incredible. I mean, you were this guy who's been kidnapped by some horrible, mysterious organisation which are looking for these ancient artefacts from, this forerunner civilization, and these artifacts are incredibly powerful and can be used to control humanity, and then the end of the world's coming, and it was building up to an absolutely fantastic story. But as the series has gone on, it hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, look at the first game and look at where we are now in the series. Basically, nothing has happened. They've had Assassin's Creed 1, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, Assassin's Creed. That is 5 console games. They've had PSP spin-offs and all sorts of different things. And the story really hasn't advanced at all. It's been dragged out so much to fit these extra games in because, the initial success of Assassin's Creed showed the developers, hello, we're onto a bit of a winner here. Let's try and cram out as many games as possible. And as a result, they've done a Lost, where it should have been 3 seasons long. Instead, they've made it 145 seasons long, and they've stretched it and stretched it and stretched it. And the problem with this is, if the characters are personable and you like them and they interact well with other characters, it doesn't matter that the story's going nowhere, because the personal interaction and the character development can carry it through. But in Desmond, they have managed to create the most bland character you've ever seen. In the first 3 games, I don't think he says anything with any emotion. And in the later games, they've tried to make it, he's got a dad he didn't get on with. And, they've tried to bring in some of this extra, personal relationship stuff. And he had to murder Lucy, who he was fancied. And, wasn't that shocking? She was a Templar spy. And it's a bit too late now. That guy is basically a plank. He's a wooden plank with a face painted on. And he is a character who you are supposed to care about, and you are supposed to want to get out of his situation and help save the world. And to be honest, I'm secretly hoping that Desmond does get recaptured by Abstergo and tortured, because it means I wouldn't have to put up with seeing him anymore. But, what saved Desmond for the starting games was Altair and Ezio. I mean, Altair, he didn't say anything in the first game. I don't remember him saying anything anyway. He was so incredibly mysterious, and this whole Assassin's Order was mysterious, and you were trying to find out about that. And then you moved on to Ezio, and he was actually charming and interesting, and he was a real person. He wasn't just Desmond the Plank. He had a life, and he had friends, and he had family killed, and he had a story and a purpose, and a reason for being who he was. And then all of a sudden, who comes out of the woods? Connor, the blandest assassin you've ever seen. I don't think he has any emotion in his voice until about 4 hours into the game. The scene where he throws that axe into the house and goes, we're now at war. He couldn't have said that with any less emotion. He is just the blandest character of all time. So in addition to having all of these key and really crucial game mechanics slowly watered down, the story has been stretched out to breaking point, and you are forced to put up with these incredibly, infuriatingly, frustratingly bland characters. And as well as this, I think Activision actually actively trolled us a little bit with one of their games. When you release a game called Revelations, you sort of think that there might be something important in there for you to want to buy that game and find out about. Revelations is quite an emotive word to use for a game that basically is filler. The only revelation you find out is Desmond is boring, and we've known that since minute 1 of game 1. So calling a game Revelations and then progressing the story literally nowhere was frankly insulting. You know, I absolutely loved Assassin's Creed at that point, and I played that game and sat down and thought, what's happened? Is anything really happened here? I don't know. It was one of those sorts of experiences. And you know what they've done with the recent game, the sort of cliffhanger ending. And if you're gonna play it, I'm not gonna spoil for you what happens. But you have dragged out the story so long, and then this game you said, right, this is the game which is going to really sort it out. You know, this is the game that's going to prove to you that we aren't just dragging this series out. Something massive's going to happen. And then you have that cutscene at the start of the game with Desmond's dad talking and going, you know, time's running out here. We need to really battle to save the world. Oh, it's going to be touch and go. Something's really going to happen in this game. And then what happens at the end of the game? Nothing. You have to buy the next game to find out. And, oh, it was just a crushing disappointment. When you've spent that long in a game grinding, and especially considering 60% of it is pointless, only to get to the end of the game and be told that you're going to have to do it again until you find out anything interesting, it's a bit much. And you know, all of the stuff they worked in, and you finding out more about the Forerunners and the conflict between them and their motivation and what they tried, yeah, that was interesting, but that isn't enough to warrant a new game. That isn't enough for you to warrant saying that this is going to be the be-all and end-all. You know, you very deliberately named them 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, 3. So you are suggesting that 3, because it's a new game and a new character, that something important is going to happen, and nothing did. And all of this leads me to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, the new one that's been confirmed after it got released early. You know, it got leaked and all of these screenshots and stuff got online, so Activision went, yeah, confirmed, that's what's going to happen, it's going to be released. And a lot of people saw that game and went, oh, pirates, they're cool, that's going to be a good game. And I immediately put my hand to my face and went, what are they thinking? Because for me, this is the final nail in the coffin for my love of Assassin's Creed, and it is so disappointing. It is really disappointing to see this, because you know, I've explained over the last 18 minutes what made Assassin's Creed special to me. You know, the open world, the assassinating, you know, the being sneaky, the difficulty curve as well, the fact that I can't just walk into the first fight I see completely unupgraded and massacre everyone inside like I can in Assassin's Creed 3. And with Black Flag and the setting they've used, I mean, how open world is a ship going to be? Really? I mean, this is meant to be an open world exploration assassination game. How much of that is going to be accomplished on a pirate ship? And yeah, they showed a trailer with some pretty cool, you know, battle scenes on the ship and swinging over, and I'm sure it's going to look fantastic and the combat will be awesome. But you know, I don't buy Assassin's Creed for that. I didn't fall in love with Assassin's Creed because of that. I fell in love with it because it was open world and because I could do things that you couldn't do in other games. You know, if I wanted to buy a mindless hack and slash, I'd go and buy a mindless hack and slash. And there's nothing wrong with hack and slashes or mindless violence games. You know, that's why I love Call of Duty so much. I love Call of Duty so much because sometimes I just want to blow a terrorist up and I don't want to have to think about how to plan a mission out. I just want to plunge into multiplayer, pull a pin on a frag grenade and watch 3 people's limbs fly across the screen and go, yes, that's 600 points. But I don't buy Assassin's Creed for that. I buy Assassin's Creed for all of the reasons I explained earlier. And the series has just gone so far away from what it was originally. And what made it special, you know, it's just not special to me anymore. And they have dragged it out so much and they rush out the game so fast that it's just, they're so rushed. And you can tell they're rushed because I mean, they're big games. The only way you can get a game that size out so quickly is by doing what they do, which is basically split it up into sections and let different developers deal with each section. Now, the one problem with this is these developers don't seem to talk to each other, so you get random things plumped in, like the random tower defense game, which obviously one developer just decided that would be a good idea and plunked it in. And then you had the Altair missions where you went back and did his life, and they were done by a separate developing team. So you've got all of these different pieces of the game done by completely different developing studios and sort of bunged together in the last month and repackaged and sold. And you can tell that it's been, you know, rushed out a little bit. And I don't like that. I don't like that in games. I would much rather wait 3 years for the core developing team to get something that they've laboured on and they love and they've worked really hard on and is special to watch. And unfortunately, they really haven't done that. And Assassin's Creed's been a massive turn-off for me now. And I'm so disappointed because I don't know what it is about games developers and games companies. They just find ways to let you down. And I got so psyched up for Mass Effect 3 and got kicked in the balls by BioWare and EA. And I was so into Assassin's Creed. And in every single game, they chip away at that enjoyment and that, you know, fandom. And it's got to the point now where I see Assassin's Creed 4 be advertised and I just think, oh God, really? Do you have to do this again? I mean, it's got to the point now where I've said enough. I don't want games like this anymore. I want games like you did before, which focused on being an assassin and, you know, were actually about something other than just mindless combat violence, which is what they've turned into now. And Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, unfortunately, looks like it's going to be more of the same. And the only way they're not going to be able to make it the same is if they do what they did in 3, which is make the naval missions a gimmicky add-on, which you do about 5 times and then you forget about and move on with the rest of the game. And this is what really has killed Assassin's Creed off for me. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I know this is a little bit random, but yeah, I've seen so much stuff about Assassin's Creed 4 that I just wanted to get something out and, you know, tell you what I think about it, because I've played tons of Assassin's Creed. I've played all of the games, like I said earlier, but it's just got to the point now where I've just put my hands up and said enough. You know, this is just not Assassin's Creed anymore. And it's gone in a direction now which has removed everything which is special about it and everything that made me enjoy it so much in the first place. But guys, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any comment that you would want to make about Assassin's Creed, if you agree, if you disagree, I'd love to hear what you have to say. You drop me a message in the comments and I will read through them all and check them out. But guys, once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a